to the Majors and Quinn Facebook page and YouTube channel. My name is Annie. I'm the events coordinator at Majors and Quinn Booksellers, which is an independent bookstore in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are bringing you another virtual author event this evening. If the people on your screen look familiar, that is because this is a part 2, a continuation of a virtual author event from a couple weeks ago. We are speaking with author Richard Thieme, and he's going to be in conversation with Jennifer Granick. We're going to continue the conversation that we had a few weeks ago that is available on our YouTube channel. There is a recorded video of that. If you would like to check it out, you can head over there. But again, they're going to be speaking about Richard's book, Mobius, a memoir. And all the themes in it that they didn't get to touch on earlier. If you are interested in the book, Richard is a local author. If you happen to be from the Twin Cities area, just know that he's one of our local Twin Cities authors. We do have copies of the book at Majors and Quinn on the shelves. So if you want to come in person, you can do that. Majors and Quinn is open to limited capacity in-person browsing, and you can pick up a copy there, or you can just go straight to our website and order it in whatever way you want, shipping or for next day pickup. I'll put a link to that in the comments under this video. Speaking of those, that's also where you can ask questions. Let us know who you are, where you're watching from, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to take a look at those towards the end of the conversation this evening. So until then, please enjoy this conversation between these two wonderful people. If you're not aware, Richard Thieme is an author and professional speaker who addresses security and intelligence issues as they come home to our humanity. This is his 6th book, and he has keynoted security conferences in 14 countries. Clients include GE, Microsoft, Bank of America, Allstate Insurance, and Medtronic, plus NSA, FBI, U.S. Department of Treasury, Los Alamos National Lab, Pentagon, and the U.S. Secret Service. And Jennifer Granick fights for civil liberties in an age of massive surveillance and powerful digital technology. As a surveillance and cybersecurity counsel with ACLU Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, she litigates, speaks, and writes about privacy, security, technology, and constitutional rights. Granick is the author of the book American Spies, Modern Surveillance, Why You Should Care and What to Do About It, published by Cambridge Press and winner of the 2016 Palmer Civil Liberties Prize. Jennifer and Richard, thanks so much for being back here with us. Have a wonderful conversation, and I will be back at the end of the show.
Let's come back, Annie.
Thank you, Annie.
It's a great bookstore, as everybody in the Twin Cities knows, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, Richard. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, I think it's great that we have this opportunity to have a further conversation about your book, because there's just so much in there and so many ideas that are part of it. And I think, sort of talking to people about the book and hearing their reactions, one of the things that people just keep coming back to and are just really enticed by is the character of Penny. And so I'd like to just take a little bit of time and talk about the character of Penny and what she means and really how did you come up with this character? Tell us a little bit about your concept of Penny and what role she plays in the story.
It was pretty easy. I just looked through my old calendar books and looked for a name that had persisted for 30 years. There was Penny. No, I shouldn't kid. We should be serious, because that's a daunting question. Because how many authors think of that? How did you come up with that character?
Well, what role does she play in the book? I mean, she's really important. She's like a very pivotal person, and her relationship with Mobius is really complicated. And how do you see that as really like, basically helping tell the story or trying to tell here?
Well, the truth is, I get her. I get Penny. Now, we all do a lot of projection. Writers do. Doesn't matter if the characters are men or women. There's a lot of me in Penny. That's for starters. I was in the clergy for 16 years. I did a lot of counseling. And just as Mobius's stories and the things that happened to him translate directly from things I knew or knew about, so do Penny's. A lot of the counseling situations were equally traumatic. That's part of the parallel journey they had. Doing counseling, encountering what I call the face of evil is a serious thing. There's a difference between mental illness and evil. It's a line that you don't know when you're crossing it, but you know when you're on the other side of it. And I know one of the things that leading security people have said to me, one at CIA, one at NSA, is until you have seen the face of evil, you can't do this work. And maybe that's true of counseling as well. Made Penny a social worker because it was suitable for the way she kept changing jobs. Um, but the kind of counseling she did, I learned, was for her own benefit as well.
Mm-hmm.
You get a rush from
Yeah.
misfortunes of others, from the intensity of their despair and the depths to which life plunges them.
Yeah.
You don't dare admit that. There's a lot of talk in the book about from Mobius when he accuses her of being like a hunter in a blind, waiting for deer to come into the clearing, which they both liken to journalism as well, so that you can take pot shots at people from safety. Journalists do terrific investigative work, but I don't ever hear them investigating 60 Minutes or CBS or the New York Times or the Washington Post. They save that intense aggression for everything but their own. And in the same way, you don't hear counselors talk often honestly about what it is in them. And Mobius confronts her with that. So, but you asked where she
Yeah.
came from. I've known an awful lot of women. Uh, I've known a lot of women. I was raised by a mother.
This is a PG rated conversation, Richard.
I will. I know. I know. I trust you to keep me on track. But I'm doing a podcast next week with Joyce Bracaglia from the Executive Women's Forum. She said, "Well, how did you get women so well?" And I said, "I was raised by a mother, and it's the same way an Eskimo gets snow. You just environment that surrounds you, and with empathy and understanding and uh, being I don't know, we still call it cisgender, male, heterosexual. Um, Women are wonderful, you know.
Well, let me ask you something about, the idea you built this character Penny with empathy. And you say, to some extent that there's a lot of you in the Penny character. And that's certainly true with the ministering that you've done over the years and with the conversations that you had, even when you were no longer formally a priest, talking to people about their experiences and, particularly in this book, people in the intelligence community. But when the time comes when Mobius is counting on Penny to show some empathy, right? He gets it all wrong. She doesn't, he doesn't predict and she doesn't, sort of extend that empathy to him when he finally comes clean and tells her who he really is.
Well, at that point, he's not really thinking about Penny. He's talking about, I've got to tell Penny, I've got to talk to Penny. Who else can I talk to but Penny? Is going through his brain because he has no one else he could even think of talking to. But he's not concerned with Penny. He's using Penny on behalf of his own confessional pathway to atonement. And what he's obsessed with is finding himself again. And he can only do so by having someone in whom he can confide. He's not in a 12-step program. He hasn't got 12-step buddies he can call. He hasn't got a sponsor he can call and tell him or her anything he wants. Penny is who's left. And Penny in that way, I've been married twice, 16 years and now 37 years. So a stable relationship, someone to whom you often turned, but with sometimes mixed motivation, maybe not to the extent that Mobius does, but we're there for the other, but we're there for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who've been divorced know that, in fact, once it's no longer working for ourselves, it's done. So there's a lot of us in there too, and there's a lot of us in how we relate to them. And I was thinking about this in that at that climactic moment toward the end of the book, both Penny and Mobius have to confront the fact that they were imagining who the other was. They had an imaginary Penny on his side, an imaginary Mobius on hers, and they both, as he accused her of doing, constructed an apparatus of truths, but half truths, and some lies as well. She gets angry at that and says, "Are you telling me social work is like being a spy?" Which is what you're talking about. And I think he says something like, "Well, what do you say? Kind of, sorta." Uh, yeah, you've adopted a persona that serves you, and if it didn't, you wouldn't be doing the work. You would be doing
Mhm.
something else. Um, and every counselor I've known, whether clergy or social worker or a therapist, has a degree of self-knowledge and self-understanding of what the mixed motives are, and it doesn't negate or mitigate the good that they do in counseling. It just helps them be more authentic because they're not pretending. As
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing in their relationship. To some extent, it's the story of a relationship with a spy. But to some extent, it's the story of every relationship.
That's right. That's right. Because everybody is presenting themselves in a particular way. And identity, which is a cardinal theme of the book, and my last novel too, Foam, is all about identity. Identity is a very fluid, modular construction that you can only capture for the moment on the fly. And who you are in relationship to someone else, it's a social transaction that creates a being. We don't exist alone. We can't even imagine what it would be like to be a human being without other human beings. You make movies about it, but they're fanciful and presume other human beings in the past or the future. No, identity is a social construction, and we are constantly engaging with other people in order to mirror back to them what they mirror back to us, they think we are. And a spy, like an actor, just gets very, very, very good at simulating that and doing it consciously and often without scruples, without
Mhm.
any accountability to any standard of morality as normal human beings think the word points. And so, of course, there have been women. I'm thinking back during a time after my divorce, many years ago, 40 years ago, when there was a woman friend. She was a friend that I turned to, and who was inside my psyche for a while in a similar way. In that, because I needed to be bonded to someone and to a woman, and my marriage was coming apart, I carried her with me as a fictive um, helpmate, if you will. Once I was married again and moved on, that she no longer served that purpose. And in fact, as we're being confessional, I remember the time I told her on the phone that I had met Shirley, my current wife. And I remember the tone of her voice when she said, "You're not going to use me the same way then ever again." Because we were using each other as a convenient way. She was later divorced. Um, so you don't know that. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that interrelationship and the idea of scruples. Um, I know that you've been getting a lot of positive feedback from people who are in the intelligence community about the book, like an immense amount of positive feedback.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about doing the research for this book and your conversations or your relationships with the people whose experiences really form the backbone of the book and whose story you're telling.
Sure.
And then the next question is going to be about how you maintain perspective about what those stories are when you're such an empathetic person and you're really channeling people and relationships through your being an author.
Well, I can count on you not to ask questions that are tiny and small. There's two parts to that one. So, where do they come from? That was kind of what you were asking.
Yeah, well, I mean, about the research and what it's like to basically have these conversations with people who are in the shady intelligence world, and to really come to that with empathy and tell those stories, but also to maintain perspective.
I really, first of all, when I was a clergyman, I knew some people who did all kinds of, a whole raft of people. And when I was on Hawaii for 3 years, people would fall out of the sky. I said it was like Yoda in the swamp of Dagobah. They'd fall out of the sky and they'd rely on you to be an anonymous person to whom they could talk for the 2 weeks they were there and then disappear forever.
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought at all, but one of the things I did really enjoy about the book is so many pop culture references.
Yeah,
I mean, pop culture references, but also literary references, but also, film. But like those references, I think are, it's one of the little joys of the book. But
I'm so plugged into that. And Mobius is constructing a fiction that he's a teacher of literature. So there's all sorts of literary allusions to support that. And one of the themes
that's smart.
keeps coming through is who is he really? And did he teach literature? I did. So there is some ambiguity about the two of us. Okay, so when I left the ministry, it was in great part, the massive part was because I was seeing what was happening with technology and how it was going to be a revolutionary engine that transformed society and identity and every damn thing about humanity. And I was right, and I was writing and speaking about it, and people in the church had no clue what I was talking about. A lot of stories about that, but I knew I would suffocate to death if I stayed and took the jobs I was being offered, so I left. And I perceived correctly, I think, that on the forefront of the technological revolution were hackers, and they were smart and clever, and hackers back then, 1990s, early 90s, very different game than it is now. And so when I was asked by Jeff Moss, aka Dark Tangent, if I wanted to keynote DEF CON 4, this conference he was getting going in Vegas, I said, sure. There were about 300 people. Well, last year there were 30,000, and I've spoken there every year for 24 years because I felt absolutely at home there, and I met people from CIA and NSA and other agencies in that very first time.
Mm-hmm.
I loved and respected who I came to understand the hackers were, and I was interested in the work that those people did. I did not anticipate that so many would become such close friends or choose to use me the way they did. But I think I perceived correctly that just as hackers were in the forefront of the technical revolution, the intelligence community was in the forefront of the transformation of society into a national security state, which had been underway for a long, long time. And to understand how hackers worked and how their brains worked and how their creativity worked was going to give me a leg up on understanding what was coming. And to understand how the intelligence community functioned really was going to give me a leg up on understanding what the hell we had built. This thing we had built, because as Mobius says, this is my story, but it's the story of the world at large now. And so I became very, very close. Some of the people I met that first time, one thing leads to another, and some of them became the very, very best friends I've ever had among them.
Yeah.
And I will say, yeah, I am empathetic. I can't help it. I chameleon what I hear. I get it, and I feel it, and I see it. And the goal of counseling, which was a discipline to try to train you in the right way to use that, was once you know at depth and layers who someone is, how can you use that on behalf of supporting their own autonomy and their own freedom and their own power? And then I was in a deep conversation with a senior at NSA once about that, and he said, we do, a spy does the very same thing, but you do it to empower people. We do it to control them. And that's why the lead guy in Bond movies is always called Control, or like Carré. The name of the game is control.
Mm-hmm.
The line of control is the person is turned into an object that serves you and your ulterior motive and purpose. And that's where it gets dicey for humans in the trade,
Mm-hmm.
who are doing the work, but somehow still have a conscience and periodically have to completely rationalize what they have become as a user of other human beings. And so to me, that's writ large. That's what we face in a society. Now, social media, as you know, has given people, as I foresaw and others foresaw, the opportunity to create multiple identities. and to pretend to be people they aren't. And so the name of the opposition to that was to connect those identities in a meaningful way so you could see who was the fundamental identity at bottom. And that, in effect, is Mobius's challenge, too. I've been all these people, someone said to me in their 50s, and I don't know if I even know who I am anymore. And that's stayed with me. So much the research, I didn't think of it as research. I thought of it as living my life and absorbing so much. I have loved learning as much as I possibly can. Not only about that, but about all sorts of other things, because the world is a rich and wondrous place, at least 50% of the time. And my insights and relationships have been the means by which I have grown, but grown in learning. I really love it.
I mean, talking about the fragmented personality, Mobius, Nick, he has so many names, in the book. It's like he's got these different personas, that are assigned depending on his job. And yet Mobius is a symbol, right? It's a symbol that you always come back to yourself no matter how many names you have.
Single-edged construction. And of course, as you probably know, I've had multiple lives. I used to do talk on how to reinvent yourself, but to me, it came naturally. Each identity, each career unfolded out of the previous one and included and transcended what went before. A lot of people don't have the courage to just let that happen. So that I grew up loving literature and learning about literature, and I taught literature. And I thought, well, this is what I might be, a writer and professor. But then I went through life-changing experiences, which went deeper, much deeper than that, in terms of who I needed to become in order to become more fully human. And that was to become an Anglican clergyman. And then to do that in Hawaii and Utah and Wisconsin required me to understand the cultures in those three very, very different places. And some people, once they adopt that persona, never leave it. They become imprisoned in it, as well as set free by it, but often imprisoned by it because they don't know who they are separate from their craft, from their person as a clergyman. They don't know who they are with the robe off. And so that's a great danger. And when I left, I had to fabricate a persona that was sufficiently congruent with who I really was and what I knew how to do, what I could be good at. So the appeal of technology was the technologists. The appeal to me was the men and women I met and how they were going to build a whole new game for humanity to play. And I just got real lucky because by then I had learned fundamental love, appreciation, and respect of everybody. If you go into the ministry righteous and judgmental, if you listen to human beings tell you who they are and their story, if you don't become compassionate, you're not paying any attention. Because I discovered that everything other people told me they had done or wanted to do, under the right circumstances, if I had been them or fashioned by their inputs, I would have done those as well. And that's what empathy is, to recognize that you could have been them, you are them as you listen to them. And my wife Shirley would often say to me when I came home, when I was fretting about something, she'd say, Richard, you're not them. You're not them. You've got to leave them behind in the office. But I would take them on, and to be compassionate toward them taught me how to be compassionate toward myself. Mm-hmm. To learn how to love other people taught me how to love myself. And Mobius says he practiced loving people with Penny. He practiced having a relationship with Penny. Well, Jennifer, what else is our relationship? I don't mean our relationship, but I mean all of our human relationships, but practicing relationship in the hope that we get better at it.
But some people need more practice than others.
That's right.
I think that the people who are watching this know from the introduction that I'm a lawyer at the ACLU, and that our work is fighting torture and, kidnapping and secret surveillance and the things that Mobius and his colleagues in the intelligence world are involved in this novel. If you empathy is one thing, but if you take just a tiny step back, as I think you do as an author, and eventually Mobius does, you see that these characters are trapped, maybe trapped in one of the most dangerous lies there is, which is the lie that you tell yourself. And they themselves are not exhibiting or imbued with empathy. I mean, one of the marked things in the book is how Nick and his colleagues show this deep disdain for the public, for the people that they're supposedly helping out, the humplings, and they're crybaby whiners, and there's this, paternalism and sense of self-importance. We do what we do for you because you don't know better, and we need to protect you.
Yeah, that got you, didn't it? I mean, you brought it up a couple of times.
It did.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's talk about that just a little bit, because there's a piece you don't want to miss. He loved his work. He loved his work, and he loved it because he got such a rush on it. He said, quoting my book, the work was better than sex, depending on the work and depending on the sex. But it's a rush. It's a rush to exercise power. He did. Yes, he went a bridge too far, because when you start down a path, the Mobius strip that he had to walk, you do not anticipate you're going to wind up in that interrogation room. You do not anticipate 9/11 is going to turn you into the monsters you are fighting, that you are going to be doing to them what they, as he says, we have to do it to them. He says, we don't have the luxury of not dealing with reality. And we have to do to them what they want to and will do to us. And we have to do it before they do. And we do it to protect people. Now, I have a relative who's like a cop, good one, very, very good one. He divides the world into, he talks about three kinds of people. The people are the sheep, and the sheep want protection from the wolves, and that's his job. And that's right at the forefront of what's going on in conversation today about the police. You want to take the shepherds out of the equation, then you've got just sheep and wolves. And you better be a sheep that can run really fast or know how to hide or climb a tree, because the wolves are going to come and eat you. Crime is way up since this has all begun.
Crime is actually down. And the thing you have to ask is, what happens when your shepherd is the wolf? And isn't that, what this is a story of? Because when you tell this story, Nick and, his colleagues start out thinking that, they're doing something good, but they learn as they pay attention that even they don't know what's going on, that there are powers above them that are doing things that are for self-interest or...
That's right. One of the pieces I wrote once upon a time was called Why We're All Going a Little Crazy. And the central figure in that was James Jesus Angleton, who did go kind of crazy doing counterintelligence, because whenever he uncovered something, he was convinced the Soviets had put it there in order for him to discover it, because they had some other plan going on underneath it. And you start living that kind of life. Hackers talk about appropriate paranoia. You better be thinking everybody's going to try to dream up every way they can get in your system that they can, because they are. So you have to think of everything that they can do to you, and that's what the work requires. And because there are specialists taking on that task for mixed reasons, most people don't even have to give it a thought. And a lot of people say to me, not a lot, but some have said, I don't want to, that's, somebody wrote to me, somebody I knew very well, and he said, I thought that was a very good book. He said, but thank God I don't have to live in that world. And I thought, well, you missed something there, because
you do live in that world. You're living in that world.
You absolutely
Just averting your eyes.
So you're right. I mean, if the identity of a sheep and a wolf and a shepherd was not a fluid identity, because sometimes we're the sheep, sometimes we're the shepherd, and sometimes we're the wolf, and that's part of what discovery has been. You don't wind up your life. I'm old. I'm an old guy now, and you don't wind up here if you're paying attention, thinking you have the high moral ground or that you know better than everybody else. But you may very well start out that way. And so don't mitigate the rush as a powerful drug. Knowing secrets, Ellsberg said, and he should know, knowing secrets is the most powerful drug there is. And you asked at one point why people in the intelligence community responded so positively to this. Well, one of the things that's delineated in the book is the necessity of rationalization. Mobius is a superior rationalizer, and there are a number of instances where he justifies what he's doing by spinning off, very smart, right? Spinning off reasons why he's doing it that may not be the full and complete reason. One of the best responses I got to this was a very senior person who I was very close to, who's now retired. And he said he opened the book and he wanted to put it down, and he couldn't. He put aside all the things he had to do, and he just kept reading and reading until he realized it included his story in a way. And I thought that might upset him, but he said,
yeah, he was pissed.
but that's not what he said. What he said is he wanted it because it awakened in him the reality of what it was like on the ground day by day to work in that agency. And he wanted to tell his current spousal unit, his current, as he put it to me, he said, I wanted to tell my Penny what I was realizing reading your book, and I couldn't. And he wasn't the only one who got back to me and saw themselves in relationship to Penny. Someone in the Netherlands said, I tried, and it just made things messy. Because you said Mobius misunderstood how Penny was going to react. Everybody does. Everybody wants unadulterated acceptance from the object of their affection. And then when you spring on them things not only horrific things, but things they can't understand. They can't understand it because their structure of reality and belief system is so distorted or different from who's the distortion? I don't know, but it's so different. And so several people said, I wanted to tell her. And he concluded, it brought up all the memories. And he said, thank you, Rick, Nick, Mobius, for the memories. Because they love the life, as mixed up as it is. And you can't really get Mobius unless you get that he loved knowing things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, and you tell the story, it's from his background. You know, yeah. He tells this story about how powerful he is and how important his work was. But to some extent, he's just a lonely person looking for a place to belong.
Yeah, just like me.
You're like the least lonely person.
Years counting. Why do you connect so much? The fellow clergyman said to me, my God, he says, you have such a relentless need to connect.
You're literally the most extroverted person I've ever met.
Yeah, but
from one extrovert to another, I can tell you.
But in part, it comes from that. There is a need to connect because what is the connection? It is the momentary illusion